The fluorescent lights of the corporate cafeteria cast harsh shadows across polished marble floors, each gleam reflecting the cold efficiency of success. But in this sterile temple of ambition, where power lunches determined million-dollar deals and casual conversations could make or break careers, something extraordinary was about to unfold, as something that would shatter the carefully constructed walls between worlds that were never meant to touch. Marcus Rodriguez had been invisible for 17 years. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., he'd clock in through the service entrance, his weathered hands gripping a mop handle that had become as familiar as his own heartbeat. The executives who rushed past him in their $1,000 suits never saw him, or not really. He was part of the building's infrastructure, as essential yet unnoticed as the air conditioning that kept their corner offices comfortable. But Marcus saw everything. He watched their triumphs and failures, their desperate phone calls to estranged children, their quiet tears after brutal board meetings. In his native El Salvador, he had been a teacher. Here, he was a ghost who cleaned up other people's messes. At the corner table by the floor-to-ceiling windows sat Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Dynamics, a woman whose name could move stock prices with a single tweet. Her platinum blonde hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her steel grey eyes reflected the same merciless precision that had built her empire from nothing. At 38, she was the youngest female CEO in the Fortune 500, a title that had cost her every relationship, every moment of vulnerability, every softness she might have once possessed. She ate lunch alone every day at precisely 12:15 p.m. Grilled salmon, no seasoning, sparkling water with lime. Routine was armor, and emotion was weakness. Today, however, the carefully orchestrated rhythm of the cafeteria was disrupted by a sound that didn't belong, a soft, broken sobbing that seemed to echo off the pristine walls like a prayer without an answer. Near the entrance, an elderly Arab woman sat hunched over, her traditional black abaya pooling around the chrome chair like spilled ink. Her weathered hands trembled as she clutched a crumpled piece of paper, tears streaming down her deeply lined face. She spoke in rapid, panicked Arabic to anyone who passed, her voice rising with each ignored plea. The lunch crowd parted around her like water around a stone, their discomfort palpable as they quickened their steps and averted their eyes. Victoria glanced up from her quarterly report, irritation flickering across her features. The woman's distress was disrupting the quiet efficiency she demanded from her environment. She was about to signal security when something unexpected happened. Marcus appeared beside the woman's table, his usually quick movements suddenly gentle and deliberate. He set down his cleaning cart and approached her with the kind of careful respect reserved for handling something precious and fragile. Then, in fluent Arabic that flowed like music in the sterile space, he spoke to her. Assalamu alaikum, ya hajja, ma ladi you adibuki. Peace be upon you, grandmother. What troubles you? The woman's head snapped up, her eyes wide with desperate hope. Through her tears, she began to pour out her story in Arabic, her words tumbling over each other like water through a broken dam. Victoria found herself leaning forward despite herself, her reports forgotten. She had studied Arabic in college, a strategic decision for international business, but she had never heard it spoken with such gentle compassion. Marcus listened with complete attention, nodding occasionally, his dark eyes filled with understanding. The woman explained that she was visiting her grandson, a doctor at the nearby hospital. She had gotten on the wrong bus, ended up at this corporate complex, and had been trying for 2 hours to find someone who could help her get back. She spoke no English, had no cell phone, and her grandson was in surgery, unreachable. She was terrified, lost in a foreign land where no one could understand her fear. Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that could warm a room full of strangers. La takafi, Hajja Sayuze Iduki. Don't be afraid, "Grandmother, I will help you." He pulled out his own battered cell phone and began making calls in Arabic. Victoria watched, mesmerized, as this man she had never truly seen before transformed before her eyes. He wasn't just a janitor, he was a bridge between worlds, a translator of not just language but of human dignity. After several calls, Marcus found someone at the hospital who could confirm the woman's story. Her grandson, Dr. Khalil Fak, was indeed in surgery but would be reached immediately. Marcus then called a taxi service, speaking in Arabic to ensure the driver would understand their passengers' needs. But Marcus didn't stop there. He walked to the cafeteria counter and returned with a cup of hot tea and a sandwich, placing them before the woman with a gentle smile. "Takalai shayan baina al-waqt wal-akar," he said softly. "Eat something while we wait." The woman grasped his hands, tears flowing freely as she blessed him in Arabic. Marcus responded with quiet dignity, "Habibi, nanu jamin bani Adam." Beloved, we are all children of Adam. Victoria felt something shift inside her chest, a sensation she hadn't experienced in years, her carefully constructed walls beginning to crack. She watched as Marcus waited with the woman, not checking his watch, not looking anxious about his duties left undone. He simply sat with her, occasionally patting her hand, speaking in low, comforting tones about his own journey from El Salvador, about missing his mother, about the universal language of love that transcends borders. When the taxi arrived 20 minutes later, Marcus personally escorted the woman outside, helping her into the car and giving the driver specific instructions in Arabic. Through the windows, Victoria watched him press some bills into the woman's hand, probably his lunch money, she realized with a start. The woman kissed his forehead in blessing before the taxi pulled away. Marcus returned to his cart, straightening his shoulders as if preparing to return to his invisible existence. But as he began to push it toward the elevators, Victoria Sterling did something that would have shocked every person who knew her. She followed him. "Excuse me," she called softly, her voice catching slightly on the unfamiliar gentleness. Marcus turned, surprise flickering across his features as he recognized the CEO he had seen but never spoken to. "Yes, Mom." Victoria struggled for words. This woman who commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals. I watched what you did for that woman." It was. She paused, searching for a word that hadn't been in her vocabulary for years. "It was beautiful." Marcus smiled, the same warm expression he had given the frightened woman. "She reminded me of my own mother, you know, lost in a place where no one could understand her fear." "You speak Arabic?" Victoria said, still processing what she had witnessed. "And Spanish, and some French," Marcus replied without pride. "In my country, I was a language teacher. Here, I clean." "But people are people everywhere, no?" Victoria felt tears threatening actual tears, something that hadn't happened since her father's funeral 10 years ago. "I studied Arabic in college, but I've forgotten so much." The way you spoke to her, it wasn't just translation. It was compassion. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Language is not just words, say a tilde plus minus or are. It is how we touch another person's heart, how we say you matter without speaking." The simple profundity of his statement hit Victoria like a physical blow. When was the last time she had made someone feel like they mattered? When had she last touched another person's heart instead of exploiting their weaknesses? "What's your name?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus Rodriguez, Mom." "Victoria Sterling," she replied, extending her hand not in the calculated power grip she had perfected, but in genuine human connection. Marcus shook it gently, his calloused palm warm against her manicured fingers. "Mr. Rodriguez," Victoria began, her voice strengthening with sudden resolve, "I have a proposition for you." Marcus raised his eyebrows, uncertain. My company is expanding into the Middle East and Latin America. We desperately need someone who doesn't just speak language, so we need someone who understands people. Someone who can build bridges instead of walls. She paused, her grey eyes softening. Would you consider joining our international relations team? Marcus stared at her in disbelief. Say A tilde plus minus or R. I clean floors. I have no business degree. Noah, you have something more valuable than any MBA. Victoria interrupted. You have the ability to see people's humanity, to make them feel safe and valued. That's not something you can learn in business school. For the first time in 17 years, Marcus Rodriguez was no longer invisible. And for the first time in 20 years, Victoria Sterling remembered what it felt like to be human. 3 months later, the corporate cafeteria looked the same: polished marble floors reflecting harsh fluorescent lights, executives conducting power lunches at pristine tables. But something fundamental had changed. Marcus, now director of cultural relations, still arrived early, but instead of mopping floors, he spent his mornings in the language lab he had convinced Victoria to install, teaching Arabic and Spanish to employees heading overseas. His USIA displayed certificates of appreciation from clients in 6 different countries, all praising Sterling Dynamics' unprecedented cultural sensitivity in international dealings. Victoria still ate lunch at 12:15 p.m. at the corner table, but now she was rarely alone. Marcus often joined her, and their conversations, a mixture of English, Spanish, and her slowly returning Arabica, had become the highlight of her day. She was learning that success could be measured in more than stock prices and quarterly earnings. It could be measured in bridges built, in understanding fostered, in the simple act of seeing another person's dignity. The elderly Arab woman Hajja Fatima, as they had learned, sent a handwritten letter every month, addressed to both Victoria and Marcus. Her grandson had established a cultural exchange program between his hospital and Sterling Dynamics, bringing together medical professionals from different backgrounds to share knowledge and build understanding. But the most profound change was invisible to the casual observer. Victoria Sterling, the woman who had built walls around her heart to protect her climb to the top, had discovered something more valuable than any empire: the realization that true strength comes not from standing above others, but from lifting them up. And Marcus Rodriguez, who had spent 17 years invisible in the shadows of other people's ambitions, had learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply be seen and to help others see themselves reflected in the eyes of someone who understands their worth. In the end, it hadn't been a business deal or a strategic merger that transformed Sterling Dynamics. It had been something much simpler and infinitely more complex. The recognition that in every persona, whether they wear $1,000 suits or push mop buckets, whether they speak English or Arabic or the universal language of TSA, there exists an irreducible dignity that demands to be honored.